Well, to be honest, the only concern thing that I'm concerned with is playing the best chess in the world, and that's what I've done in these past two matches. And um, with regards to a matchup, you know, uh, I don't understand how the chess world has become so distorted and so incapable of understanding reality. The reality is that if you assess my over-the-board chess, there has never been a shred of evidence of ever any over-the-board cheating. Every single organization, including the most corrupt ones like chess.com, have proven that I have an innocent. And the only reason that I was defamed and attacked was because someone had threw a hissy fit and acted on a personal vendetta to ruin my career. But for me, uh, I have absolutely, in my eyes, this is only about proving to myself that I can overcome the greatest obstacle in the world, which is this sort of evil chess mafia, which is working against me. And I don't mean to say this as a lightly, like it's just for me, it's hard to even take those questions seriously because I find the sort of chess establishment to be so just insane. Like I don't understand how when you're a 19-year-old kid, you can be united against by the entire chess establishment, be proven innocent time and time again, and still have your career attacked and destroyed and blacklisted. It's like for me, I simply don't even look at these people. They're not even for me, they've sort of degraded themselves morally by trying to destroy my life so much that I don't even take them seriously. So
What's, I guess, your take on it? Do you think there's any collusion? Do you think people are trying to blackball Hans and eliminate him from the world of chess?
I think what he's saying that there is like a determined effort over a long period of time that doesn't hold merit because he clearly he's on chess.com. He has the platform. He plays in their events, and that he's given a platform to speak about all his thoughts. So all this is like they want this conversation to happen, and they want Hans to play probably because he's also good for their views and um, for their events because he is a figure that brings a lot of attention, whether it's positive or negative or just controversial, whatever it is. He's obviously a person that people want to watch and talk about and watch play chess. And if you're trying to get someone out of your events, then you probably don't, you know, um, allow them to continue playing all your events and being basically like the centerpiece as he has been for the Speed Chess Championship. He's basically been the most talked about person, right? So you can't say these people are all against me while you're on. I mean, you can say it obviously, but it doesn't really, to me, ring true if you're saying, okay, all these people are against me while you're. It's like if I went to a country and I said, you know, they're trying to imprison me, and meanwhile they're just like giving me a platform to speak, and then they don't imprison me, and then I keep saying, well, they're trying to imprison me, but they're doing is giving me opportunities to interview. But if we go back in time, so that's why I say it's not like a continued effort. If we go back in time,
And just to
first of all,
kind of drill on that point, Danny does mention that as well. You are now back on chess.com. By the way, he's giving a 30-minute interview to discuss all of these things, and he's not being cut out by the host,
I don't think they should.
which can be
They shouldn't. They should allow him to speak his mind. It's
again
interesting.
exactly, and that's exactly what Danny also
Sure.
says. You are now back on
But if we
chess.com,
go,
playing in all of our events, which likely would have happened much faster if you haven't filled a lawsuit that was dismissed in federal court. And we are
yeah,
clearly providing a platform in our events and broadcasts for you to voice your perspective. We aren't limiting you in any way. So basically, exactly what you just mentioned, and this was addressed by the
but
CEO of
I do
chess.com
disagree
as
with
well.
Danny on this. If
Okay,
we go back in the past,
okay,
uh, if you go back to, well, actually, this is a long history, right? So Hans admitted that he cheated online when he was 12, and I
yes,
think 16. He mentioned these two ages.
multiple times,
Uh,
yes.
well, he didn't say multiple times, but he said like when I was 12 and 16, right? So, and of course, when you were 12 and 16, you are a child or a mid-teenager. But yeah, you're very young, and if you make some mistakes, even some serious mistakes, we of course can allow forgiveness for this. Um, but chess.com did forgive him, right? They did not, when he initially cheated, when he was 12, when he was 16, they said, okay, we know you were cheating, but, we're going to give you a second chance and a third chance to play on our site, and this was not public.
Again,
Now,
just to kind of give all the information about how, let's say, this banning system was working previously. I don't know if this was changed, but chess.com was generally giving a second chance to cheaters, more or less. If the cheaters or the people, that broke the fair play regulations were admitting to it. So if you admit it, you're generally giving another chance, another account to play from.
yeah, look, and if a 12-year-old cheats, I'm not saying, end their career, obviously. So that makes sense. But then in 2022, something changed, which was that Magnus withdrew from the tournament after he lost to Hans, right? It's very well known.
Round 3 single cup, yes.
After round 3. And then chess.com made a decision to uninvite Hans from the global championship. And this is where I think they actually say this is a mistake. I think it's a mistake not only from a point of like morality, but also from a point of it was a professional mistake. It backfired on them.
Yes. And
if they
Danny addresses that, he said that he apologizes directly to Hans for that. And he says that they didn't handle that situation correctly.
Now, if Hans means that in that situation there was collusion against him between, and I think this was actually one of the main points of the lawsuit, that basically there was a merger between the Play Magnus group and between chess.com, and coincidentally in all of this, coincidentally or not, I guess is a question, but let's say coincidentally in all of this, there was also a cheating scandal, and Hans was blacklisted after he beat Magnus, and the idea is that Magnus lost and then started complaining to everyone, saying you have to get rid of this guy, and then all these organizations went and did that for him, which I don't know. I don't believe that's exactly how it worked out, and of course I don't know the internal conversations, but the timing is really really odd and is not very flattering to chess.com that immediately after they just invited him from this tournament that he fairly qualified for. And they admit this is a mistake. I think it was a very costly one for them. And yeah, you could argue that it can't be a coincidence that Magnus and chess.com were kind of partners, and then suddenly these two seemingly unrelated events happened. And okay, so what Danny mentions is that basically if you ruin your reputation by cheating, then the consequences of that are hard to control. Basically, that's what he means, right?
Yes.
On the other hand, chess.com probably should, like, in one case you have a 19-year-old person, and they're not going to act in a completely perfect manner, but as a big organization, probably you should be acting with more responsibility, right? So you should make sure that your actions are 100% morally and professionally correct. And while if you're just one person, especially a 19-year-old person, then okay, you could easily make mistakes like I think that Hans also made a miscalculation, which I think that when this all went down, he should not have made this explosive interview. I think like the correct thing to do is to try to resolve things internally. And then if you can't do that, then you go to the more explosive methods. But before anything could have been discussed, he went and he gave this very, very passionate interview where he started to attack a lot of people. And I don't think that I think this was like his first instinct, right? He just emotionally did this.
This was definitely an instinct-based decision, I would say, but I don't know exactly, and again, I think we're just speculating at this point how much discussion was internally being had between Hans and the chess.com team. We don't know that because, again, his interview, this explosive interview, happened after round 5. So this was, let's say, a day and a half after he got banned from chess.com, after he was banned from accessing his account. A day and a half. He didn't do the explosive interview after day 4. He did it after day 5. So there was a pause.
Nothing could have happened early. Like he couldn't. if he had tried to negotiate and say, like, what you're doing is completely unfair. Yes, maybe I cheated when I was years ago, but you unbanned me for that, and now you can't just suddenly ban me on based on things that you had already unbanned me for. And that would be a very fair point. Like, you can't, unless you have some new evidence, you can't just suddenly remove me from a tournament that I qualified for. And if he had done all that internally and then I think probably figured things out, I think that it actually would have worked out in the sense that they would have found a mutual understanding, most likely. Although, of course, you can never know. And if that doesn't work, then you go to the either public opinion or lawsuits and so on, which he actually went to both. But if you notice, once the lawsuit started, then everyone was
Quieted
suddenly
down.
quiet. So
Yeah.
so the initial interview was a very emotional thing, and which you can't blame someone for being emotional in that situation, but I don't think it's the best way to go about things. Like, unless you first make sure and exhaust your options in terms of negotiation with the other party, I think that that should be the first step.